I want to say good morning and welcome to our Unity South Central Region Business Mastermind. This is April already, which is shocking. I don't know if you're shocked, but I am shocked that we are in April already. And I want to talk to you about something that you might not think of as oriented towards business. This is a business mastermind. And so normally we're talking about the business of volunteers or the business of onboarding staff or the business of working with your budget or all kinds of, last month's class was on the ethics of governance and how we work with our board. So normally this class has a very solid business foundation. But once or twice a year, I like to put something in that we don't think of so traditionally as being business oriented, something to get you thinking. And this year, one of the requests was that I put something in on the topic of eco-spirituality, which I'm excited about because it's a big deal for me. So much of my spiritual life is kind of grounded in the actual understanding of the earth as the first holy book, that it's the first thing that was created for us to have any concept. It was put in place for us before we even got here to have some concept of what is holy. And so my experience of that has been pretty wide and pretty broad and pretty tall. And I spent about 7 years running an eco-spiritual center and taking groups from churches out into nature. And the reason for that is because what we really want, and I think I don't think I'm speaking just for myself. I think many of us would agree with this, that what we really want for the people we serve is for them to have an experience of the divine that is their own. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
To have an experience of the divine that belongs to you, that was not given to you by a minister, was not given to you by anybody else, but is your own experience, empowers you to directly connect to source. And so let me say this as well. A lot of the people that come to us are coming with an experience of an exterior source. And the tremendous amount of our work is to bring them to the indwelling source. And there still is that experience that happens for us that is an exterior connection to source. And that can happen in lots of different ways. It can happen when we get we hear a little voice, we hear something, we actually hear, see, sense, smell, and interact with something that we did not put in our environment. And we can look at it and go, well, how did that happen? Or it can happen when we have connection with someone who has passed. Something happens, my son told my father, when you go, Grandpa, I'll know you're there if you just pull my toe. So just pull my toe sometime and I'll know. He woke me up at 3:00 in the morning, about 2 weeks after my dad passed away, and said, I just got woken up by Grandpa. Grandpa just came in and pulled my toe really hard and woke me up. Now, did he get wrapped up in the covers or something like that? We don't know. But for him, it was a very deep experience of something profound happening out of his physical sight. So the thing about eco-spirituality is the term is coined by the Jesuits. It is a practice that moves back through the ages to people who didn't read, who only had the land around them. They only had the animals, the skies, the rivers, the oceans. They learned from what nature showed them. And eco-spirituality invites people to reconnect to the wholeness. So why do I think it's important for this group? Because we are first wanting people to have a spiritual experience of the holy that is their own. And a lot of times people blow this off. They experience something in nature and then they blow it off and pretend it didn't happen because they have no context for it. because we're not talking about it. We're not making it possible for them. And second, because it's a tool that you can use to give examples of how natural life actually operates. And we're kind of plugged in so solidly to the industrial age, to the age of electronics, that we sometimes forget how foundational the earth below our feet is to what we do. So I want to just talk with you today about some of the ways that you can use nature to speak, to metaphorically explain, and also to actually give people suggestions for directly plugging in. When we talk about oneness and we talk about interconnection, we are talking about something so much bigger than just people. But if we never say that, then our people may never be exposed to that concept, may never really understand. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to jump into our slides here. So again, Unity South Central Region and a conversation about eco-spirituality and what nature can actually teach, and how nature can help us too. It's not just how nature can help the people that we serve, but there's also consideration for how you can use nature to help you be the minister that you want to be, to settle into the place that you want to settle in. It is a very cheap therapist. So I want it to be available to you. How many of you have at your place of church, because you're not all in your own church buildings, how many of you have a garden or a place in of nature in your spiritual center, in your spiritual area? And do people use it? Do people sit outside? Do they go to this place? Or is it just a pretty place that's there? If your people use it, raise your hand. Okay. So a couple of you, I'm kind of scrolling across, a couple of you also have it and it doesn't get used. So maybe this will help you also to tune people into the place that you're in, the space that you're in. So as we go through today, I want you to think about the fact that eco-spirituality is more than ecology and theology. And that's generally what people think. This is the combination of ecology and theology. Eco-spirituality at its core is about calling us to, and calling our people to reconnect, to be people of the earth as well as people of the sky. So no matter how much we talk about the heart of the holy being right here in our chest, people will still look up when they're talking about their God, however they define that, whatever word they use. Very rarely will people talk about the indwelling and turn themselves here. If they talk to you about talking to God, they will talk about the sky God. They will look up, they will assume that up is where that is. And we forget how really miraculously holy the planet is as well. How really we are born of all of the things that make up this planet. As I said, some of you came in after my opening comment. I interpret the earth as the original holy book. It is the very first thing that was created for us to have some way of understanding intimacy and ultimacy, the intimacy of connecting with something and the ultimacy of something that was big enough to create all the things that we experience. So I'd like you to think about today in terms of how we use the natural resources we have to reconnect to some of the things that our ancestors learned, that are the foundational understandings from which most spiritual teachings evolved. Relationship with the earth, relationship and understanding of the things that the earth teaches us, and then combined with insights and prophecies and intuitive experiences. So one of the most important things that we can use nature for is to help people understand that we were not designed to be perfect. Nature, while we can say it's perfect in its cycles, nature has lots of imperfections. When you move through nature and you just look at trees have lots of imperfections, don't they? They have been eaten by bugs. They have been struck by lightning. They have, there are lots of things. They have grown through seasons where there wasn't enough water and grown through seasons when there was too much water. They have been frozen and not been able to bear fruit, and had seasons where the fruit was so plentiful that most of it ended up on the ground and couldn't be eaten. So to be able to help people in our society understand that this notion that we have of perfection does not play out in the world around us, that what plays out instead is adaptation and learning, is really valuable, really, really valuable to people because they can see it everywhere. And once you talk about it, once you actually put it in front of them, they will see it in their yard. They will see it when they go hiking. They will see it when they're at the beach. They will see it wherever they are. And that idea that we're supposed to be perfect is a really important one to let go of. The idea that we are loved is a really valuable one. And I love this quote. I wonder if the snow loves the trees in the field, that it kisses them so gently. And then it covers them up snug like a white quilt. And perhaps it says, go to sleep, darlings, till the summer comes. There is a way to speak about nature that takes us to a gentle place in our hearts, to speak about how the snow loves the ground, to speak about how the ocean loves the sand or the sand loves the ocean, to speak about love in a way that is more than what we think of as human, has to do with how we work together, how we connect with one another, how our ebb and flow in life is demonstrated in the natural rhythms of nature. Allows us to recontextualize some of the things that we've taught about lots of different ways and not necessarily really had the opportunity to embrace from an exterior position, because love is something we teach about mostly by teaching here. You know what it feels like to be loved, or you know what it feels like not to be loved. But the observation of love and interaction is a really valuable one when we take it out of the human perspective and we put it in a perspective of relationship. How do we demonstrate love with one another? What does that mean? How do we watch for it in nature? Another piece that I really like to use nature for is to talk about pain, because sometimes when we talk about pain, it's too much for people that are having it. It's hard for us to address pain because when we're in the middle of it as listeners to that, it can, and maybe you guys have had this experience where you're speaking about pain or sorrow or sadness, and someone in your congregation is actually in weeping tears in a time when you can't necessarily step down off the platform and walk over and be with them and comfort them. But I've had it happen where people are weeping to the extent that it's audible to the community. It's clearly difficult, and that sometimes people feel like they have to leave the sanctuary because whatever I've said has caught them. So when we step outside of, again, the human condition and we start talking through the lens of nature, it causes sometimes just a little enough separation that people can still have their tears, but they're not contextualizing it personally. So don't be ashamed to weep. 'Tis right to grieve. Tears are only water and flowers. Tears are only water, and flowers, trees, and fruit cannot grow without water. but there must be sunlight also. A wounded heart will heal in time, and when it does, the memory and love of our lost ones is sealed inside to comfort us. So to take this, just if you just used this quote as the basis of a teaching around pain and sorrow, and talked about the value of what water does to cause growth, how it causes us to grow, what happens for us what really happens, both scientifically, spiritually, and emotionally when we cry. What happens with our tears? What do they do for us? How do they open us? How does something grow from the water? It's softened. It's called forward. And combined with spiritual teachings, in this case, we might use metaphorically sunlight, combined with spiritual teachings, we can have our grief and we can move also back into the sun, get called back into the sun, get called back into our spiritual understanding. So sometimes these metaphors are really important. Sometimes they give us something, they give us an opening to talk about something that can be difficult to talk about and also crucial to talk about when it comes to the life that we lead. And something like this can be helpful also for you as a minister if you look at some of these metaphors, when you have people come in for pastoral care. Jean-Marie and I have had long, lengthy conversations about the difference between pastoral care and pastoral counseling. And we've had that conversation here as well. The importance of understanding the difference between those things and making sure that you're qualified. Anybody is qualified to use nature as a metaphor for life experience. So when you think to yourself, I just don't always have the right words. When someone is in my office and they're in pain, I just don't always have the right words. Understanding the metaphors that are presented to you by nature can help you to find those words when you're struggling for them and looking for something that will be comforting, something you can say that will be comforting. To live in each season as it passes, breathe the air, drink the drink, taste the fruit, and resign yourself to the influence of the earth is a statement by Henry David Thoreau that speaks to presence, to being present, to live each season. This is a lesson completely in itself, isn't it? And we can teach about presence and actually give people the experience of presence by asking them not to just sit in meditation, find a place and sit in meditation and be present, but go sit in your lawn chair in your yard and don't do anything. Sit in your chair in your yard and notice. Notice what it is to breathe the air. Notice what it is to take in, to drink in the colors of your yard. Just notice who walks by. Notice what's happening right now. See what you hear. See what fragrance is in the air. Just be present, because that's when the Holy will come to you. The Holy is not coming to you in the past or in the future. You've already been there or you're not there yet. The Holy is coming to you in this moment of presence. So how do we find presence if we're lousy? I know I hear it. I know you guys hear it. I hate to meditate. I hear that all the time. I'm not good at it. I can't just sit still. Oh, but you can. Go outside. Find a place you love to be. Sit still. Notice where you are. Be present to the moment. Be present to everything that is alive around you. Put your hands on the ground. Feel the temperature of the soil. Is it warm? Is it cold? You're present. Can't feel that unless you're in the present moment. You can make this a whole lesson. And it's a useful tool, isn't it? It's a valuable tool that people can actually walk right out the church doors on Sunday and go home and use to find the stillness in themselves, to find a place of comfort and ease. And in a world that is as frantic as ours is, this is a valuable way to bring people to center. I love that Jackie's DEIJB class, it has the B on it. I love that, Jackie. I love the belonging piece, that this is about belonging. Life is so much about belonging right now. Everything that we're learning, everything that is changing in life right now is largely about not belonging or belonging, and deciding where we belong, and deciding who belongs, and deciding how we belong someone who doesn't think the way we do. This idea of belonging is such a powerful, powerful, powerful piece of our life in 2024. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people. Over-civilized, isn't that a good word? We have lost our wildness. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home. That wildness is a necessity. Boy, again, there's a whole lesson we can teach in this, that when we connect with nature, we find the wildness in our heart. We find the part of us that wants to climb a certain place or swim a certain place, or gets called to interact with an animal or an insect or a breeze. Like those of you that have, well, all of us have hair. All of us have hair. All of us have interacted with the breeze, right? That time when you just stand there for a minute and the breeze blows your hair wild and you can't help but laugh. You can't help but laugh. You have to, because everything you did to make it perfect and now it's all over the place. What happens when we use examples like that and we invite people to laugh? What if nature is dancing with you? What if nature is playfully tousling your hair like your grandpa used to do and saying, let some of that stress go. You don't have to be perfect. Relax. You belong to me. I belong to you. We are of the earth. We all live on this little bitty planet floating out in space. And we belong to each other. And we belong to the trees, and we belong to the wind, and we belong to the water. There is a belonging that cannot be denied when we connect with the earth, unless you meet somebody who didn't come from here and you saw them come down and land their spaceship. Otherwise, the people you're interacting with, they came from here. And there is common ground, because it is truly common ground. We all belong on this planet. So when we try and teach about belonging, there's a great lesson in remembering that your feet on the earth are the same feet as the people in Palestine. This is the same planet we're walking on. The same as people who feel like they can't walk into their business because their lifestyle isn't accepted by the people they worked for. This is the same planet. People who have been rejected and asked to leave their parents' home because who they are is not acceptable. This is the same planet. We are all walking on the same planet, and we have many things in common for that. Our need for food and sustenance, our choice in clothing, the fact that we've built these buildings to shelter us. We have a lot in common when we bring that belonging into a bigger picture. And the idea that we are over civilized and have forgotten our roots is really a big one, because nature has a natural way, an ionic way of relaxing us, of bringing us into a place of peace. And we all experience it when we get out there and do it. But sometimes as ministers, we forget to talk about it. We forget to say, this resource is available to you. There's a reason there are parks in our city. Go sit on the grass. When you put, there's all kinds of scientific studies being done right now about putting your bare feet on the earth and the actual energetic shift that goes on, the measurable, scientifically measurable shift that goes on in the way your body works because you put bare feet on the earth. There's a whole health piece of our remembering that nature is a resource that is really important, that we can use when we're struggling with how to help somebody deal with the stresses of regular everyday life. We kill all the caterpillars and complain that there are no butterflies. This is a fabulous metaphor, isn't it? How many times do we teach our children not to do things and then wonder why they're afraid to do things? How many people have sat in your chair as a minister who have tremendous skill, tremendous potential, but they're afraid because someone told them they couldn't? We've all used the butterfly imaginal cells as an example of how something can be hidden within you. If you haven't, please do. Please consider that. Imaginal cells are one of the miracles of life. They are the cells hidden inside a caterpillar that turn it into a butterfly. And sometimes we don't know what's hidden within us. We don't know who we're going to become. It's an important thing for you to know about yourself as ministers when you feel like the caterpillar, and we all do sometimes. Sometimes we feel like we're crawling belly on the ground, trying to just slug our way through every single thing that needs to be done. But there is something so brilliant about who you are as spiritual leaders. There's such colorful flavor in your unique approach to ministry. None of us were meant to be carbon copies of one another. And you are called to serve a community that needs exactly the gifts that you bring. And once you get into that community, you may cocoon a little as you get to know them, but over time, your colors will unfold. And so will the colors of your community. They will unfold in unexpected, unbelievable, miraculous ways, because that's the nature of life. That's who we are. So understanding that and looking for it, and when you see it, embracing it as natural and supposed to happen, changes things. It changes things because we can count on the fact that caterpillars are going to turn into butterflies every single year. It's not just a miraculous one-time thing. It happens cyclically over and over and over. And the same will happen with you, and the same will happen with the members of your community. And our job is to see it and to witness it and to call it out. To say 3 months ago, you were really struggling, and I see the beauty of what has developed in you as a result of your struggle. And I just hope you see the miracle in you. I hope you notice that, because you know what? People don't tell us that, do they? They don't tell us that as ministers, but the people that we serve, they don't hear it either. So when you see that the caterpillar has become a butterfly in your community, it's as important to point that out as it is to make yourself available when they're struggling with the caterpillar phase. It's important to say to people, wow, I see who you are. I witness the beauty of your life. I'm really so grateful I get to see this and be part of it with you, because the world doesn't have a lot of that and it needs it. And we do see it because they're brave enough to share with us their caterpillar moments. And they will always lead to something beautiful. We just have to remember to watch for it and not get caught up believing that we're only here to help the people who are struggling, because we have so much more we can do. Man is the most insane species. He worships an invisible God and destroys a visible nature, unaware that the nature he's destroying is this God he is worshiping. So there's this big question of people who follow nature-based paths, that nature is something separate and we're not supposed to worship nature. We're supposed to save our worship for this invisible, intangible, whatever we call that, God, universe, divine source, great mind, whatever it is. And yet we know that we in unity know that we are the manifestation, right? We are the manifestation of the divine mind, the divine heart. We are the manifestation. We know scientifically through quantum science that all of this energy is the same field of energy. So everything that we see in nature is the expression of the holy. And when we look at nature through that lens, and we look at ourselves through that lens, that we are the living expression of the holy, it changes everything about what we do. It changes fear. Because nature for a lot of us is something that we're afraid of. So when you have to talk about fear and about the gifts that are brought by the things that we're afraid of, nature is a really great metaphor. It's a really great opportunity to look at why we think something is scary. What taught me that this thing is scary? If I'm afraid of one snake, do I have to be afraid of every snake? If I'm afraid of one human, do I have to be afraid of every human? It's a very relatable thing. And again, a way to talk about something with staff, a way to talk about something with your congregation, a way to understand something for yourself, a way to relate to anybody on the planet, because we have this in common. It's a common language. Nature is a common language and has common understandings. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. You know, how many of us have gone to the Grand Canyon and been just wonder-filled at the endurance of nature, at the endurance of the planet, or gone to the redwood forest and seen those trees that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old? Put your hands on them. They have endured so much. If you think about what it takes for those trees to stand, how many storms, how many hurricanes, how many lightning strikes, how many what? How much has been endured by nature? In our interconnection, in the roots that hold us together as people, we are much stronger than if we stand alone. When we connect and we look at nature as an example, there are tremendous ways for us to perceive the strength that comes from our interconnectedness, from the cycles that nature relies on itself for. First, the bugs come, and then the birds can come. If the birds come before the bugs, there is no food. So first in spring, we see the bugs, and then the birds come. And then after the birds come the animals who subsist or share space with the birds, who carry things on their feet to different places. All of that interaction, all of that interconnectedness is what we need to strengthen our society today. And it's something we need to talk about in our community. What happens if we bring children to our sanctuary? Children bring their parents. If we have no children in our church, the parents of children are not coming. We require the little people, that those little people, giving reason for little people to come, brings a younger group of people into our sanctuary. So if your sanctuary is completely gray-haired, it's probably going to stay that way unless you find a way to get children in. One thing relates to another thing, relates to another thing, just like it is in nature. The most important for me about nature is that it's a place that we can have a direct experience of the divine. We can look at the colors and the textures and the diversity and the voice that comes when the wind blows through the trees and the fragrance that's carried on that breath of nature. We can look at the miracle of all of that and ask ourselves, how is it that all of this came to be and it works so well together? And I don't know how you position that, but for me, there has to be a divine hand in this. We could not create it. We don't have the ability to create the blend of all of that. There's something about leaning with your back against a tree when you're in tears that allows you to settle in and feel supported. There's something more than just the wooden trunk of a tree. There's the life that's holding you, that is not it's not the life that came from you that filled that tree. It's the tree meeting you alive, connected, supporting you. It's a real living being. And the connection that happens between the two of us, when I spend time with a tree like that, or any part of nature, the connection that we have with nature creates the third presence, the divine presence between us. The understanding that there is something more, that we can walk as it, we can be it, we can choose it, and whether we do or not, it's still there. At least if our eyes are looking at it, we see it. So to be able to direct people to use nature as a tool for healing is valuable. To be able to use nature as a way of talking about difficult things is a valuable way to help people understand. To get yourself out in nature and get your feet on the ground and sit and be present yourself will help you to deal with some of the stress that is part of this job inherently. It's a very important tool. So I go back to what I said at the beginning, which is that eco-spirituality is not about ecology and theology. Eco-spirituality is about connection and how we reconnect to one another and to the earth, and how we bring these lessons that were originally gifted to humanity back to people so that they can ground and find peace in the world that they share. Does that make sense? Is it helpful? So I'm going to invite you. Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, it's very helpful. As it so happens, my talk on Sunday is all about eco-spirituality. So when I saw that this was the topic this week, I literally squealed out loud. But I have a question of, you just said something about the creation being I'm looking for your wording, the third presence of the divine, or the third.
Yeah,
Are you
so-
comparing that to like the Trinity, like the Holy
No.
Spirit, or no?
No, I'm
Say more
comparing it
about
to
that.
the mastermind.
Okay.
So the concept of mastermind is that when my mind and your mind come together, there's a third presence, which is what is created by the two of us, right? It is when we come together, even
Gotcha.
if just one of us is teaching, the coming together brings something new. We're inspired by one another. The same is true if I have my back against a tree. There is the tree and there is me. And then there is who we are together when I allow myself to be one with that being. And that being opens up to me, which nature, in my experience, as soon as we open to nature, nature opens right up.
Mm-hmm.
It's as though it's programmed into nature to do that. So when we do that, and it can happen in a tree, it can happen leaning against a boulder.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen just because you have your feet on the ground. It can happen when you have flower petals in your hand. But there is a connection to life that is not just my life and its life, but our life as interconnected beings. And something new comes out of that. So when we step into nature and we allow ourselves to really connect with the living force that is nature, we become co-creative. And there's something available to us. There's a potential understanding and experience available to us that is not available to us singularly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on this right now, Karen?
It just so happens that our Tuesday book study is Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, which is all and you know, just sitting in the first chapter of the book, I could see people being so moved and touched by it. I'm hoping that they are experiencing nature, and it's so true. You know, yesterday I have to have nature around me, and my backyard has about a dozen oak and maple trees in it. So I leaned up against the tree and what you said is so, so true. I had to go get pen and paper because as I was sitting with this tree, my entire lesson for Sunday was written. So it is a creative force. Yeah. So thank you for affirming and reaffirming that. Yeah.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Any other comments or questions?
I
Go ahead.
had, is it okay if we use your slides?
I will absolutely. So remember that my slides get posted on the Unity South Central Region website. They are posted with every video, because you might watch a video and think, I love all this stuff we talked about, but I need to reorient it for my staff or my board or whoever. So that it's all there for you so that you can take this information and teach from it and use it. So yes, including these. But I will
Right.
send these to you now, since some of you have stuff coming up. I will send them to you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's my pleasure to make those things available to you. That's my greatest hope, is that you will go back and they will be useful for you in another way, that you can readapt them for your communities. So please, it's all that stuff is put there for you. Apollonia?
Just happened that last Sunday, somebody new came by and said, do you have meditation class or have any kind of meditation, not during the service, but separate from it? And I just mentioned that we have book studies and I don't really have a meditation class. And I was thinking, I might bring them out into the garden, sit down, and it says, let's do a meditation here. I think
Yes.
it would be wonderful if the weather cooperates.
And
Would be
that's why I
great.
wanted to, that's exactly why I wanted to do this class now, because you guys are going to start working on your yards and your lawns and your gardens and the spaces that surround your sacred space. And we do that differently when we think of it as holy space, useful space for the community, rather than as the way we keep our church looking nice, right? Two really different perspectives. Really different perspectives. We can have a beautiful lawn, but if we have no place, no bench, no place to enjoy it, we are missing a tremendous connection opportunity. So I was hoping that you guys would think a little bit about this as you go forward into the time that the earth is so alive, and consider, how do you use the sacred space outside? Jackie?
It's something that's really been on my mind lately, because we don't have any really yard to speak of. And so two things. One, we are, in a building that we don't own, and it's very industrial. The whole neighborhood is. And so one, I'm trying to get a meeting with the owner to see if we could actually break up some of the concrete that is parking space that never gets used, and actually put some meditation gardens in. But the other thing that I think will be easier and we could do more quickly is, but I also have to request, is to create a living wall. Because I think it's just so easy, in our Good Friday service, we had a very experiential, like, Stations of the Cosmic Christ, and I used a garden trellis for one of the stations, and we used our palms from Palm Sunday on the ground around it and kind of in it, and people just commented about how they felt like they were outside, and so it's just a little power of suggestion, with the power of imagination, and it really shifted just how people were engaging with that space in the room. And we had other things too, plants and roses and lots of water. But I think that might be one way. And I'm wondering if anyone has any experience with a living wall. Like I don't. So I'm also like, but what's the upkeep of that? Like, like what happens? I've got 3 plants that I've kept alive for like a year. And I'm like, okay.
I think what I would suggest you do is call the extension office for your local university.
Mhm.
Whatever is your ag university, I would call their
Mhm.
extension office, because they'll have all kinds of information about that kind of gardening.
Okay.
And see if you can speak to your local, you'll have an extension officer, your capital city, you'll have an extension officer there.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
see if they can, if they have tools and resources available. They also have a program called Master Gardeners. And what Master Gardeners do is help you plan gardens and build them so that they're sustainable. It's
Mhm.
one of the areas that they look at. So you could also reach out to Extension and ask if they have a Master Gardener group that might be willing to help you with the creation of this.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is, guys, what we're going to do when we come back together after in the middle of the month, because we meet on the 1st and the 3rd Wednesdays, what we're going to do on the 3rd Wednesday is we're going to talk about how to create an outdoor experience, how to actually take a church service outside. What would that be like? And how do you do it in a way that's easy? Because there are a lot of hard ways to do that. And you want to do this so that it's so easy that it's fun. And where can you do it? And what do you need to do it? And how can you convince your community that every once in a while you should breathe fresh air together? So we'll talk through that when we come together. We'll co-create something when we come together, and we'll make lots of choices. Some things that we could add if we wanted to, and things that we don't have to have, because there are lots of ways to make it really fancy schmancy and lots of ways to make it just so simple and easy and such a blessing for your community. Sound good? Okay. Well, then I will see you in a couple of weeks. And if you have any needs between now and then, please reach out. If you're watching this as a recording, thanks so much for being with us. The slides should be posted with this video, and our second meeting of the month is always a private meeting so that we can talk about real situations, but you are welcome to join us anytime. Thanks, you guys. Have a great day. I love you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.